There's a moment when someone crosses a line. They say something that stays with you. They do something that feels unfair. They treat you in a way you know you didn't deserve. And instantly, something inside you reacts. Not slowly, not calmly, but sharply. You feel the urge to respond, to say something back, to prove a point, to make them feel what they made you feel. It feels justified. It feels powerful, like taking action will restore balance, like reacting will give you control again. But look deeper. That reaction is not strength. It is attachment. Because the moment you feel the need to respond, you are no longer in control of yourself. You are responding to someone else's behavior. Your emotions are no longer yours. They are influenced by what someone else did. And that is where most people lose without realizing it. They think revenge is power, but revenge is reaction. And reaction is always controlled by something outside of you. The Stoic sees this clearly. They understand that not every action deserves a response. Not every insult deserves attention. Not every situation deserves your energy. Because energy is not unlimited. Attention is not free, and where you place it shapes your life. If you place it on anger, you stay connected to what hurt you. If you place it on revenge, you stay tied to the person you should have left behind. You remove your attention. Everything changes. Silence is not weakness. It is control. It is the ability to feel something deeply and still choose not to react. It is the discipline to walk away without needing to prove anything. Because the strongest position is not the one that fights back the fastest. It is the one that cannot be pulled into unnecessary battles. And that is the shift most people never make. They spend their time reacting to everything, every comment, every opinion, every moment of disrespect. And in doing so, they give their power away again and again. The Stoic does the opposite. They pause, they observe, and then they decide if the situation even deserves a response. Most of the time, it doesn't. Because real power is not in what you do to others. It is in what you refuse to let others do to you. And the moment you stop reacting, you stop being controlled. That is when everything changes. That is when you begin to understand that the most powerful revenge requires no action at all. It never starts with calm thinking. It starts with a moment, a sentence someone says, a tone that feels disrespectful, an action that crosses a line. And instantly, something inside you reacts. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts speed up. Your mind begins creating responses before you even fully process what happened. You don't pause. You don't reflect. You feel. And what you feel pushes you toward action. You want to respond. Not later. Now. You want to correct them. You want to prove something. You want to make sure they don't think they can do that again. It feels justified. It feels necessary. It feels like strength. But look closely at that moment, because that moment reveals something important. You are not acting from control. You are reacting from emotion, and reaction is always tied to something external. It means your state has been influenced, shifted, moved by something outside of you. That is the part most people never question. They believe the urge to respond is power. But the truth is, the stronger the urge, the less control you have. Imagine this. Someone disrespects you in a conversation. They say something that feels intentional, something that hits your ego. Your mind instantly prepares a response, sharp, precise, ready to hit back. In that moment, you feel in control. But you are not choosing your reaction. You are being pulled into it. The situation is leading you, not the other way around, without realizing it. Because they think responding quickly means strength. They think reacting sharply means confidence. They think proving a point means they've regained control. But all they have done is confirm that they can be triggered. And once someone knows you can be triggered, they understand something about you. They understand where your control ends. There is a psychological reason why this happens so fast. When you feel disrespected, your brain enters a defensive state. It tries to protect your identity, your image, your sense of self. So it prepares a reaction to restore balance, to remove discomfort, to prove that you are not weak. But this response is not coming from clarity. It is coming from impulse. An impulse is rarely aligned with strength. Because it is immediate, unfiltered, uncontrolled. Now consider a different response. The same situation, the same comment, the same moment of tension. But instead of reacting instantly, you pause. You feel the urge, but you don't follow it. You let it pass through you, without turning it into action. You stay still, calm, unmoved, not because you didn't notice, but because you chose not to engage. That choice changes everything, because now you are not being controlled by the situation, you are controlling your response to it. And that is where real power begins. Most people never reach this point, because they are addicted to reaction. Every action requires a response. Every disrespect requires correction. Every challenge requires defense. But this belief keeps them trapped, always reacting, always responding, always tied to what others do. The Stoic sees through this pattern. They understand that not every moment is worth your energy. Not every comment deserves your attention. Not every situation needs your involvement. Because energy is limited, and where you place it defines your life. When you react instantly, you give your energy away. You invest it into something temporary, something external, something that should have no control over you. But when you pause, you take that energy back. You keep it. You redirect it. You use it where it actually matters. This is the shift. From reaction to control. From impulse to awareness. From weakness to discipline. The urge to get even will always exist. That feeling does not disappear. You will still feel it. You will still notice that internal push to respond. But the difference is, you stop obeying it. You stop turning every feeling into action. You create space between what happens and how you respond. And in that space, you build control. Control is not about never feeling anything. It is about feeling everything and still choosing your response carefully. It is about understanding that your first reaction is not always your best one. It is about recognizing that immediate response often leads to regret, and delayed response often leads to clarity. When you master this moment, the moment of impulse, you change your entire presence. You become harder to provoke, harder to influence, harder to control, because now your actions are not automatic. They are intentional, and intention creates stability. The truth is simple. The urge to react is not your enemy. Blind reaction is. The moment you feel the need to get even is the exact moment you are being tested, not by the other person, but by your own discipline. And how you respond in that moment decides whether you stay controlled or become controlled. Revenge feels powerful. It gives you a sense of direction when something inside you feels disturbed. Someone disrespects you, and instantly your mind begins to move. Not toward understanding, toward response. You start imagining what you could say, what you could do, how you could make things even. And in that moment, it feels like you are taking control, like you are refusing to be weak, like you are standing up for yourself. But that feeling is deceptive, because what feels like control is often just reaction in disguise. And reaction is never fully yours. Think about it carefully. If someone's action can trigger your need to respond, then your state is no longer stable. It is influenced, moved, shaped by something outside of you. That is not power. That is dependence. Imagine a situation. Someone speaks about you negatively. You hear about it later. Your mind starts replaying it. You think about what they said, why they said it, what you should do now. Slowly, your focus shifts from your life to them, from your direction to their behavior. You start planning a response. Maybe you confront them. Maybe you respond indirectly. Maybe you try to prove something through action. But no matter what you choose, one thing remains the same. They are now controlling your attention. And attention is the most valuable thing you have. There is a reason revenge feels so strong. Your brain is trying to restore balance. When something feels unfair, it creates internal tension, a sense that something is not right. Revenge appears as a solution, a way to release that tension, a way to feel equal again. But this solution is temporary, because it does not remove the root. It only reacts to the surface, and reaction keeps you connected to the problem. The more you think about revenge, the more you replay the situation. The more you replay it, the more it stays alive in your mind. And the longer it stays alive, the more control it has over you. This is the hidden trap. Revenge does not free you. It attaches you. It keeps you tied to the very thing you should have moved beyond. When you act out revenge, you are not choosing your path. You are adjusting your behavior based on someone else's actions. You are no longer leading your life. You are responding to theirs. And that shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Because now your decisions are not coming from clarity. They are coming from emotion. And emotion, when not controlled, is unstable. Think about people who constantly react. Every comment affects them. Every opinion triggers them. Every situation pulls them in. They are always responding, always reacting, always involved in something unnecessary. Do they feel powerful, or do they feel controlled? Because constant reaction is not strength. It is lack of control. Stoic understands this clearly. They do not deny the feeling. They do not pretend nothing happened. They feel the disturbance. They recognize the impulse, but they do not follow it blindly. They pause, they observe, they separate the feeling from the action, and in that separation, they regain control. Revenge loses its power when you see it for what it is. Not strength, not justice, but attachment. Attachment to what happened. Attachment to how you were treated. Attachment to how others see you. And attachment always creates vulnerability. Because whatever you are attached to can influence you, can disturb you, can control you. Real power is different. It does not react immediately. It does not chase balance through action. It does not try to fix everything through response. It remains stable, grounded, unmoved. Even when something feels unfair, even when something feels personal, because it understands that not every situation deserves energy, and not every feeling deserves action. There's a quiet strength in not responding, not because you are ignoring, but because you are choosing not to engage. That choice is where control exists. That choice is where freedom begins. The moment you stop needing to respond, you remove the other person's influence over your state. They may have acted, they may have spoken, but they no longer control how you move forward. Most people never make. They believe reacting gives them power. But in reality, reacting gives power away. The truth is simple. If your peace can be disturbed by someone else's actions, and your response is driven by that disturbance, then your control is not complete. But when you feel everything and still choose not to react, you take that control back. Revenge feels powerful because it promises immediate relief, but real power does not rush. It does not react. It does not depend on what someone else did. It remains steady, clear, unaffected. And the moment you understand that, you stop chasing revenge as a solution. Because you realize the strongest position is not proving something to others. It is becoming someone who no longer needs to. There is a price to revenge that most people never calculate. Not because it is hidden, but because it is internal. You don't see it immediately. You feel it slowly. At first, it seems harmless. You are just thinking about what happened, replaying the situation. going over the words, the tone, the moment, trying to understand it. But understanding quickly turns into something else. You begin imagining responses, what you could have said, what you should have done, what you might do next. And without realizing it, your focus shifts from your life to the person who disturbed it. This is where the cost begins, because attention is not neutral. Where you place it, your energy follows. And when your attention is stuck on someone who wronged you, your energy is no longer yours. It is tied to them. That is the first loss. Not your reputation, not your position, your attention. Think about how much time is wasted on something that already happened. Minutes turn into hours. Hours turn into repeated thoughts. The same scene, playing again and again in your mind. Each time adding more emotion, more intensity, more attachment. And the more you replay it, the more real it feels. The more present it becomes, even though it is already in the past. This is how revenge traps you. It keeps the past alive. It refuses to let the moment end. Because as long as you are thinking about it, you are still inside it. When you focus on revenge, you are not just thinking. You are planning. You are considering actions, responses, ways to balance what happened. But every plan you create is based on someone else's behavior. Your next move is not coming from your direction. It is coming from their action. And that is a dangerous position. Because now your path is no longer self-directed. It is reactive. You are adjusting your life based on something external. And anything external can shift again. Which means your direction is never stable. This instability creates something deeper. It creates mental exhaustion because your mind is constantly active, constantly thinking, constantly analyzing, constantly returning to the same situation, and the more it returns, the more it drains you. Your focus weakens, your clarity fades, your ability to move forward becomes slower, not because you lack ability, but because your energy is divided, half in the present, half in the past. There is also an emotional cost. Every time you think about revenge, you reconnect with the original feeling. The frustration, the anger, the sense of being wronged. And each time you revisit it, you strengthen it. You make it more familiar, more dominant, more part of your identity. This is how temporary emotions become long-term states. Not because they were strong, but because they were repeated. Most people believe revenge will bring closure. Respond, once they fix the situation, they will feel better. But that relief is temporary, because the real issue was never the other person. It was the attachment to what happened. And action does not remove attachment. Awareness does. Detachment does. Control does. There is also a social cost that is rarely noticed. When you act from revenge, your behavior changes. You become reactive, sensitive, focused on proving something. And people feel that. They may not say it directly, but they notice the shift. Your presence becomes less stable, less grounded, less controlled, because your actions are no longer coming from clarity. They are coming from emotion, and emotional reactions are unpredictable. The Stoic understands that every reaction has a cost, not just externally, internally. They measure not just what happens, but what it does to them, their state, their focus, their direction. And when they see that revenge disturbs all three, they step away from it, not because they cannot act, but because they choose not to. Walking away is often misunderstood. It looks like inaction, like passivity, like weakness, but in reality it is control. Because you are choosing not to invest energy where it will not return value. You are choosing to protect your attention, to preserve your clarity, to maintain your direction, is far more powerful than any reaction. The hidden cost of revenge is not what it does to others. It is what it does to you. It keeps you tied to something that should have ended. It keeps your mind in a loop that has no benefit. It keeps your energy focused on something that does not deserve it. When you stop chasing revenge, you do not lose anything. You recover something. Your attention, your clarity, your control. And once you have those, you move differently. You think differently. You act from direction, not reaction. The truth is simple. Revenge feels like progress, but it is not. It is repetition. The same moment lived again and again inside your mind. And the longer you stay there, the more you lose. The moment you understand this, you stop trying to correct the past. You stop trying to balance what happened. You stop trying to respond to something that is already over. And instead, you return to yourself, to your path, to your control. Because the greatest loss is not what someone did to you, it is how long you allow it to control you afterward. There comes a point where you realize something important. Not every situation deserves your reaction. Not every disrespect requires a response. Not every moment is worth your energy. But this realization does not come easily, because everything around you teaches the opposite. You are taught to stand up, to respond, to defend, to prove. You are told that silence means weakness, that walking away means losing, that not reacting means you allowed it to happen. So you react, you respond quickly, you try to correct every situation, you try to balance every moment where something felt wrong. But the more you do this, the more you feel pulled in different directions. Because now your actions are not guided by your purpose, they are guided by what others do. And that is where control begins to disappear. The Stoic shift is not about doing nothing. It is about choosing what deserves something. It is about understanding that your energy is limited, your attention is valuable, and your response should not be given freely to everything. Walking away is not weakness, it is selection. It is the ability to look at a situation and decide, this does not deserve me, not emotionally, not reactively, but clearly, calmly, with control. Most people cannot do this, because they are attached to the idea of being right, to the idea of being understood, to the idea of proving themselves. So when something challenges them, they feel pulled to respond, to explain, to defend, to show something back. But this pull is not strength. It is attachment to how they are seen, to how they are treated, attachment to how others behave. And attachment creates vulnerability, because anything you are attached to can disturb you, can move you, can control you. The Stoic removes that attachment, not by ignoring reality, but by seeing it clearly. They understand that people will act in ways you cannot control. They will speak in ways you do not agree with. They will behave without awareness, without discipline, without intention, and none of that requires your reaction, because your reaction does not fix their behavior. It only affects your state. When you react emotionally, you lose clarity, you lose control, you lose direction, and all of that is a higher cost than the situation itself. Walking away protects that. It protects your clarity. It protects your energy. It protects your focus. And most importantly, it protects your position. Because when you are not reacting, you are not being controlled. You are not being pulled into something unnecessary. You are not allowing someone else's behavior to decide your next move. That is real strength. The ability to remain unchanged in situations that are meant to change you. The ability to stay calm when something tries to disturb you. The ability to walk away when everything inside you wants to respond. This is not easy, because the urge to react is strong. It feels immediate, it feels justified, it feels like the right thing to do. But feeling does not always equal truth, and the Stoic understands that. They create space between the moment and the response. And in that space, they decide. Not based on emotion, but based on control. They ask a simple question: does this deserve my energy? And most of the time, the answer is no. Because most situations are temporary, most comments are insignificant, most actions from others are reflections of them, not you. So why give them control over how you feel and how you act? Walking away is not losing the moment. It is winning yourself. It is choosing your state over the situation. It is choosing your direction over reaction. It is choosing long-term control over short-term satisfaction. Because reacting may feel good in the moment, but control feels better over time. When you master this, your presence changes. You become harder to provoke, harder to disturb, harder to influence, because your reactions are no longer automatic. They are chosen. And when your responses are chosen, they become powerful. People notice this difference, not because you say anything, but because you don't. They see that you are not easily pulled into situations. They see that you do not respond to everything. They see that your energy is not available to everyone, and that creates respect, quietly, naturally, without effort. The Stoic shift is simple. You stop asking, how should I respond? And you start asking, should I respond at all? And once you understand that question, you begin to see how much of life does not require your reaction. And in that realization, you gain something most people never develop: control without force, strength without noise, power without reaction. There is a kind of power that does not look like power at all. It does not raise its voice. It does not react quickly. It does not try to prove anything. And because of that, most people underestimate it. They think power must be visible, loud, immediate, forceful. But real power often moves in the opposite direction. It becomes quieter as it becomes stronger. This is the shift that changes everything. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding the situation that once controlled you. You remove yourself from the cycle of action and response. And in doing that, you take your power back without anyone even noticing. Think about how most conflicts work. Someone acts, you react, then they respond again, and the cycle continues, back and forth, each side feeding the other, each action creating another reaction. This loop can continue endlessly, not because it needs to, but because both sides keep participating. The moment one side stops, the loop breaks. There is nothing left to respond to, nothing left to continue. That is where quiet power begins, not in winning the exchange, but in ending it. Most people never do this, because they feel they must respond. They feel they must protect their image. They feel they must prove something. So they stay in the loop. They answer every comment. They react to every situation. They involve themselves in things that do not move their life forward. Their focus becomes weak. Their direction becomes unclear. All because they could not stop reacting. Quiet power is different. It does not engage in unnecessary battles. It does not respond to everything. It chooses carefully where to act and where to remain still. This choice is what creates control, because control is not about doing more. It is about doing less with intention. There is something powerful about a person who cannot be pulled into reaction. No matter what is said, no matter what is done, they remain steady, calm, unmoved, not because they don't feel anything, but because they choose what deserves a response, and most things don't. When you reach this state, people begin to notice a difference, not because you are louder, but because you are harder to affect, harder to provoke, harder to influence, and that creates a kind of presence that words cannot create, because presence is not built through expression, it is built through control. There is also a psychological shift that happens here. When you stop reacting, you stop giving others feedback on how to affect you. They no longer know what triggers you, what moves you, what gets a response from you. And without that information, they lose control over you completely. Because control depends on predictability. If someone knows how you will react, they can influence your behavior. But if your reactions are controlled, measured, and sometimes absent, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability creates distance. That distance protects you. Quiet power also protects your mind, because you are no longer constantly reacting to external noise. You are not pulled into every situation. You are not thinking about every comment. You are not carrying every interaction with you throughout the day. Your mind becomes lighter, clearer, more focused, because it is not filled with unnecessary reactions. This clarity changes how you live. You begin to move with intention. You make decisions based on your direction, not based on what others do. You act from purpose, not from emotion, and that shift creates stability, because now your life is not being shaped by external events. It is being shaped by your internal control. Most people think power is about control over others, but real power is control over yourself, your reactions, your attention, your energy. And the moment you control those, you no longer need to control anything else. Because nothing outside of you can disturb your state without your permission. There is also a deeper truth hidden in this. When you stop reacting, you stop carrying emotional weight. You stop holding on to situations that should have ended. You stop replaying moments that no longer matter. And that creates freedom. Not the kind that comes from changing others, but the kind that comes from releasing them. Quiet power is not passive. It is disciplined. It is not weak. It is controlled. It is not avoidance. It is selection. The selection of where your energy goes, and what you refuse to give it to. The moment you understand this, you stop chasing reactions. You stop needing to respond to everything around you. You stop proving yourself through action, and instead, you become still. Not inactive, but intentional. And in that stillness, something powerful happens. You become untouchable to things that once controlled you. Because control is no longer outside of you. It is within you. The truth is simple. The less you react, the more you control. The more you control, the less others can influence you. And when others can no longer influence you, you hold a kind of power that does not need to be shown to be felt. There comes a point where something shifts inside you. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly. You stop reacting the way you used to. The same situations appear, the same types of people, the same kind of disrespect. But your response is different. You notice it and then you let it pass. No urge to respond, no need to prove anything, no desire to get even. Just awareness and control. This is the moment you begin to become untouchable. Being untouchable does not mean nothing happens to you. It does not mean people stop talking. It does not mean life becomes easy. It means something deeper. What happens no longer controls you. Your state is no longer dependent on external behavior. And that changes everything. Most people live in a constant state of reaction. Their mood changes based on what others say. Their energy shifts based on how they are treated. Their focus breaks every time something unexpected happens. They are always adjusting to the outside world, always responding, always affected. And because of that, they are always vulnerable. Because anything can disturb them, anything can pull them out of balance. But when you become untouchable, that pattern breaks. You are no longer easily moved. Not because you don't feel, but because you don't follow every feeling into action. You create space between what happens and how you respond. And in that space, you gain control. Imagine someone trying to provoke you, a reaction. They expect emotion. They expect engagement. But they get nothing. No argument, no explanation, no visible disturbance, just calm presence. That moment confuses them, because their expectation was based on your old behavior. But your behavior has changed. And when behavior changes, control shifts. People can only influence you when they understand how you react. If your reactions are predictable, you can be controlled. If your emotions are easily triggered, you can be moved. If your attention is easily captured, you can be distracted. But when your responses become controlled, measured, and sometimes completely absent, you become difficult to read, difficult to influence, difficult to disturb. And that creates distance. Not physical distance, mental distance. A boundary that others cannot easily cross. This is where real strength shows, not in how quickly you respond, but in how well you can remain still when everything inside you wants to react. Because that moment is a test of discipline, a test of awareness, a test of control, and most people fail it without realizing it. They react instantly, they follow the feeling, they give away their state. But when you pass that test, you gain something rare. Stability. Stability is what makes you untouchable, because it means your state does not shift easily. You are not pulled in different directions by every situation. You remain centered, grounded, no matter what happens around you. There is also a quiet confidence that comes with this state. Not loud, not forced, but natural. Because you no longer feel the need to defend yourself constantly. You no longer feel the need to respond to everything. You no longer feel the need to prove your value. You simply know it, and that knowing removes pressure. When there is no pressure, your actions become cleaner, more precise, more intentional. You speak when it matters, you act when it is necessary, and you remain silent when nothing needs to be said. This balance creates presence, and presence is what people feel, even if they cannot explain it. Becoming untouchable is not about isolation. It is not about ignoring everything. It is about control. Control over your reactions, control over your attention, control over your energy. Because once you control those, nothing external can easily disturb you. There will still be moments where you feel the urge to react. That does not disappear, but now you recognize it, you see it clearly, and instead of following it, you let it pass. That is the difference. That is the discipline. Over time, this becomes your default state. You no longer need to force it. You naturally remain calm, naturally remain controlled, naturally remain focused on what actually matters, and because of that, you move differently. Think differently. You live differently. The truth is simple. People lose control because they react to everything. They give their attention to every situation. They allow their state to be shaped by others. But when you stop doing that, you take everything back. Your attention, your energy, your focus, your control. And once you have control, you no longer need revenge. You no longer need to respond. You no longer need to prove anything. Because nothing outside of you has the power to disturb you anymore. That is what it means to become untouchable. Not protected from the world, but no longer controlled by it. And that is a level of power most people never reach.